Peter Sanders was born in London in 1946. His professional career in photography began in the mid-1960s when he photographed major music stars including Bob Dylan, Jimi Hendrix, The Doors, The Who, Rolling Stones, etc. Towards the end of the 1970s, Sanders' attention turned to matters of the soul, which led him on a spiritual quest to India and finally to the Muslim world, where the spiritual beauty of Islam left an indelible impression on him. After his return to England, he embraced Islam and was given the name Abd al-Adim. In 1971, he was given the unique opportunity to photograph the rituals of the Hajj, or the annual pilgrimage to Mecca. These images appeared in the Sunday Times magazine, The Observer, and many of the major newspapers because of their rarity. For Peter Sanders, faith and photography had been part of his spiritual development. It was his quest to capture the essence of reality that led him to Islam and, camera in hand, to the door of the Kaaba. From photographing the most famous idols in the music industry to the holiest sites in the Islamic world, Peter Sanders' journey encompasses more than a change of focus for his camera lens. Having photographed almost every famous person in the music industry bored me, and I started to get involved with spiritual things. I wanted something more, and so I decided to go to India. I packed my bags and went, looking for a teacher. I finally found one, who was basically a Hindu who had many of what we would consider Islamic qualities. I studied with him for about 6 months, and by the time I got back to England, some of my friends had become Muslims. And there were other friends who had become heavily involved in drugs and alcohol. It was as if God was asking me, "Which direction do you want to take?" I didn't know much about Islam, but I had dreams and various other things happened to me. So I decided to become a Muslim without knowing much about it. I was 24 at the time, and 3 months after becoming a Muslim, I decided to do the Hajj. I didn't have the money, but I had already made my intention. My elderly Muslim teacher at the time had also made the intention and knew I wanted to go. Someone gave me the ticket and I went. It was at the Kaaba that I learned that my teacher had died on the way. At that time, in 1971, photographs of the Hajj were very rare. Peter Sanders received special permission to photograph the holy sites, a decision that still surprises him. It was very rare for a Westerner to take photographs of the Hajj. I went from office to office in Jeddah and Mecca and finally found a man who had the authority to grant me permission. Many people didn't want to take responsibility at the time, and generally didn't like photographs, especially taken by a convert. But this man was in a position to authorize me, and he did so based purely on trust. For Peter Sanders, photography is essentially a means of capturing the spirit of Islam. As he describes his efforts, the words of an Urdu poet come to mind. To see the reality of Medina, it is not enough to look, you need vision. As if seeking this vision wasn't already a big enough mission, Peter Sanders has tried to pass it on to others. He has spent the last 30 years documenting the remnants of traditional Islamic societies that are rapidly disappearing from the earth. One of his ongoing projects, in an attempt to capture vanishing traditions, has been to compile a photographic album of the great scholars and saints of our time. The 2 volumes, which he hopes to raise funds to publish, include photos of people who were first photographed, some of whom have passed away in recent months and years. About Peter Sanders. 1. Peter Sanders, internationally recognized as one of the leading photographers of the Islamic world. The photographer began his career in the mid-1960s covering the original rock scene in London, capturing the now legendary music icons in a collection that is considered a collector's classic. Towards the end of the 1970s, Sanders' attention turned to matters of the soul, which set him on a spiritual quest that took him to India and eventually to the Muslim world. All the while the photographer captured his surroundings on film, creating a different and remarkable record of the last vestiges of traditional Muslim societies in transition. Sanders' deep commitment to and love for traditional Islamic culture has brought him into intimate contact with people and places that few photographers have ever reached. "My photography has always been an extension of my life," he said. "Photography is a wonderful process, a godsend, that has allowed me to learn so much about myself and the world around me. It's like recording a moment, trying to capture a beautiful bird in flight. The photographs are extremely and extraordinarily beautiful," says Japanese art critic Tsuyoshi Kawazo. "The importance of Peter Sanders' work should not be underestimated," said American writer Michael Sugich. "He is the only photographer working today who has systematically and with great devotion covered vast areas of the Islamic world as a person intimate with the subject. Because of his deep understanding of the culture and his impeccable spiritual courtesy, he was able to photograph places and people that virtually no Western photographer has been able to access. He left an indelible, poetic and breathtaking record of an extraordinary moment and a rich and fascinating culture." It was also quoted, "He captures the spiritual beauty of creation itself." Sanders' photographs have appeared in many international publications, including Time magazine, Paris Match, The Observer, the Sunday Times magazine, Aramco World and the London-based pan-Arab news magazine Al Mahala, which published his work as its cover story. His intimate photographs of the holy cities of Mecca and Medina are in great demand. Peter Sanders Photography Limited includes travel, location and studio photography, a photographic library of over 120,000 slides and also the production of art prints. This year will see the publication of his first photographic book, In the Shade of the Tree. 3 more are in